Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Hold on. Stop what you are doing right now, because what I am about to break down for you is the kind of draft scenario that makes Vikings fans forget every nightmare they have ever had about the interior defensive line. We are deep in mock draft season, and the latest Yahoo Sports 2026 NFL Mock Draft 6.0, put together by Nate Tice, yes, son of the legendary Mike Tice, and the brilliant Charles McDonald over at The Ringer, has just dropped a Vikings scenario so juicy, so perfectly cooked, that I had to pull up a chair, sit down, and talk to you fine people about it immediately. We are talking about a trade down, an extra third-round pick, and a 6'6", 327-pound freak of nature from the University of Florida who absolutely went nuclear at the NFL Combine just days ago. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, because the Minnesota Vikings might be about to strike gold, and they are going to do it on a discount. Let us set the scene first, because context is everything in the NFL draft, and the setup here matters as much as the punchline. The 2026 NFL Draft is shaping up to be one of the most fascinating in recent memory. It is loaded at quarterback, stacked at offensive tackle, and headlined by Indiana's own Fernando Mendoza, Heisman Trophy winner, national champion, and almost certain #1 overall pick to the Las Vegas Raiders. That part is basically settled. The Raiders are getting their guy, and Mendoza, who led the Hoosiers on one of the most stunning championship runs in college football history, is going to get his shot at the next level. From there, the Raiders are also picking up a cast of absolute studs in this mock. Ohio State's Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, who, by the way, just broke the internet at the NFL Combine with a historic performance, plus Reuben Bain Jr. and Francis Mauigoa. That is one whale of a haul if things broke that perfectly, but this is a mock draft and we are here to have fun. Moving down the board, pick 7 goes to the Dallas Cowboys in the form of David Bailey, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech who had a monster combine himself. Pick 9 sees Carnell Tate slide to the New Orleans Saints. At pick 10, the Cincinnati Bengals are grabbing Caleb Downs, yes, the Ohio State safety, who has been turning heads all season long as one of the most complete defensive prospects in the entire class. That is a steal at 10, honestly. The Bengals getting an elite safety to revamp that battered secondary? Sign me up. Then we get to the cornerback run that changes everything for the Vikings, and this is where you need to pay close attention. Mansour Delane, the LSU cornerback, comes off the board to the Miami Dolphins. Just a few picks later, Jermad McCoy, who, despite missing all of 2025 recovering from a torn ACL, is still considered by Mel Kiper Jr. himself to be the top corner in this entire class, goes to the Dallas Cowboys. And then Avion Terrell, the Clemson corner, whose brother AJ was drafted 16th overall back in 2020, rounds out the trio as he comes off the board just before Minnesota is on the clock. 3 elite cornerbacks. Gone, done, off the table. By the time pick 18 arrives for the Vikings, the top of the cornerback market has been wiped clean. Now here is where it gets really interesting, because rather than panic, rather than reaching for the next available defensive back or doing something desperate, the Vikings, in this scenario, pick up the phone and call the Cleveland Browns. And Cleveland, sitting at pick 24, is absolutely willing to deal. The trade works like this. Minnesota sends pick 18 to Cleveland. In return, the Vikings receive pick 24 and pick 70, which lands right in the heart of the third round. On the trade value chart, that is a relatively clean exchange. You are giving up some first-round premium, yes, but you are pocketing a third-round pick at pick 70, which sits right in what every draft analyst loves to call the meat of the draft, the thick of it, that sweet spot in the top 100 where real contributors and long-term starters get found every single year. And what does the pick 18 that Minnesota sent away get used on? The Browns use it to take Caleb Lomu, the Utah offensive tackle, and arguably Fondo, a player described in this mock as someone who can basically play all 5 positions on the offensive line. Cleveland is building their trenches. Good for them. But the Vikings? The Vikings are about to make a move that is even better. With the 24th overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings select Caleb Banks, defensive tackle, out of the University of Florida. Now let me take a moment to explain to you exactly why this should make every single Vikings fan do a full backflip off their couch, because Caleb Banks is not just a prospect. He is a statement. He is a phenomenon. He is the kind of player that comes along once in a generation at the defensive tackle position, and what he just did at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis confirms every bit of that hype. Banks checked in at 6 feet 6¼ inches tall, weighing 327 pounds, with 35-inch arms, 10 7/8-inch hands, and, are you sitting down for this, an 85¾ inch wingspan. That wingspan is the longest recorded by a defensive tackle at the NFL Combine in nearly 25 years. 25 years. We are talking about a man who, when he stretches his arms out, covers more lateral ground than almost any interior defensive lineman to set foot in Indianapolis in a quarter of a century. And he is not just big, he is explosive. Banks ran a 5.04 40-yard dash. For comparison, Pro Bowl legends Jurrell Casey and Gerald McCoy ran that same 5.04, but they weighed 300 and 295 pounds respectively. Banks is doing it at 327. He posted a 32-inch vertical jump, identical to Aaron Donald's. His broad jump of 9 feet 6 inches matches Gerald McCoy's. These are not good numbers for a big man. These are historically elite athletic numbers for an interior defensive lineman. Period, full stop, no asterisk needed. His Senior Bowl performance already had evaluators buzzing. Now the Combine has turned the volume all the way up. USA Today Sports has Banks projected as high as the 14th overall pick after his Combine showing. He came in as a mid to late first-round prospect and left Indianapolis as a legitimate top 15 conversation. The fact that in this Yahoo mock draft scenario he slides to 24 because of the injury-shortened 2025 season he played in just 3 games after breaking his foot represents the kind of value that franchise-altering draft decisions are made of. Let us talk about the football, because the measurables are jaw-dropping, but what Banks does on the field is where the real argument gets made. He accelerates off the line of scrimmage with a first step that offensive linemen simply are not prepared for at his size. He combines that quickness with an arm-over move, a hump move, and a developing inside spin that already flashes professional polish. His change of direction skills allow him to pivot and take advantage of oversets. He was, by every account, one of the most talked-about players on the field during Senior Bowl practices, showing an ability to take coaching and make real-time adjustments, something you do not always see from raw prospects. Yes, there are things to work on. His pad level is too high. He stands up out of his stance and can get pushed around by double teams when he is not playing with proper leverage. He needs to improve his block deconstruction and his consistency finishing plays after creating penetration. But here is the thing, and this is the crux of the entire argument for why this pick is brilliant. Those are coachable issues. Those are technique problems. And the man who would be getting first crack at fixing those technique problems is Brian Flores, one of the best defensive minds in the entire NFL. The mock draft itself says it perfectly. Banks is not a finished product, but he has far more polish than a typical developmental project, and he was incredibly disruptive in every game he played this season. His movement skills and footwork at 6 feet 6 and 330 pounds are described as incredibly rare. And when you put a player like that in front of a coaching staff like the one the Vikings have, with Flores running that defense, the ceiling is not just high, the ceiling is essentially unlimited. Compare that to the other name most frequently mentioned in this conversation, Caden McDonald out of Ohio State. McDonald is a very good prospect. He projects as a true nose tackle, great against the run, solid space eater. But the consensus is that McDonald will likely be limited as a pass rusher at the next level. His ceiling is defined. His floor is safe. Whereas with Banks, you are betting on a player who could become dominant in every phase of interior defensive line play if the technique development clicks. That is the difference. That is why the Vikings take Banks over McDonald if both are available. And now let us zoom out and look at what Minnesota actually walks away from this draft with, because the big picture here is arguably more exciting than any individual pick. The Vikings entered the 2026 NFL Draft holding 8 picks total. With this trade down, they add pick 70 from Cleveland, which means they now have 5 selections in the top 100, 5 shots in the slot machine of the top 100, as the original breakdown put it. That is an extraordinary amount of draft capital for a team that has specific, identifiable needs across the roster. Minnesota still has Jalen Redmond in the mix as a rotational player, Elijah Taki provides depth, and now you are sliding Banks in as the developmental starter at nose tackle, filling the void left by Javon Hargrave, who is expected to be a cap casualty this offseason, and Jonathan Allen, who is also likely moving on. The cornerback situation, which felt catastrophic when all 3 top corners went off the board before Minnesota's pick. It becomes far less dire when you zoom out and realize that with 5 picks in the top 100, the Vikings have every opportunity to find a quality corner on day 2 or early day 3 of this draft. This class has depth at corner. The first-round corners are elite, but the value in rounds 2 and 3 is real. Trading down and stockpiling picks to address corner later rather than forcing an early reach, that is smart, patient, franchise-building football. The rest of this first round, by the way, reads like a spectacular class for everyone involved. Max Victor, the massive offensive tackle, heads to the Philadelphia Eagles to eventually pair with whoever lines up opposite him once the legendary Lane Johnson retires, and that is a mouth-watering future for Philly's offensive line. Blake Miller, who has been rocketing up draft boards in recent weeks, goes to the San Francisco 49ers. Keldrick Falk from Auburn, one of the more electric edge rushers in this class, goes to the Packers via the Cowboys. Jeremiah Love, the Notre Dame running back who was electric in 2025 with nearly 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns, goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, though it feels like a pick that might change depending on what Kansas City does in free agency. And Akeem Messidor goes to the Denver Broncos, because apparently Denver decided to just stay the course and draft someone approximately 97,000 years old, which feels very on brand. Casey Conception, the wide receiver out of Texas A&M, who returned 2 punts for touchdowns in 2025 while also being a legitimate deep threat, lands with the New England Patriots, and honestly that feels like a perfect fit for a team trying to protect Drake May and build something new in Foxborough. Colton Hood, the other Tennessee quarterback in this deep quarterback class, wraps up the first round with the Seattle Seahawks, underlining just how rich this class is at the position. But all roads in this analysis lead back to Minnesota, because when the smoke clears after round 1, the Vikings have done something truly intelligent. They resisted the temptation to force a cornerback pick in a position run that did not perfectly match up with their slot. They moved down, collected an extra 3rd-round pick, and landed a player who, if Brian Flores does what Brian Flores does, could be lining up next to the best interior defensive talent Minnesota has had in years. Think about it. This defense was already incredible in 2025. Flores already had this unit playing at a historically disruptive level. Now you are potentially adding a 6'6", 327-pound, combine-destroying monster to that interior, a player with the wingspan of a 7'47" and the first-step quickness of someone half his size. With 5 top 100 picks to address the rest of the roster's needs, that is not just a good draft. That is the foundation of something special. That is the kind of move that 3 years from now people point to and say, that is when it all started coming together. Caleb Banks is the pick, the trade down is the move, and the Minnesota Vikings might be about to build something that keeps opposing offenses up at night for a very long time. If you made it to the end of this breakdown, you are exactly the kind of football mind this channel exists for. Drop a comment below. Do you love the Vikings trading down for Banks, or do you think they should have stayed put and grabbed a corner? Let us have the debate. And if you are not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? hit that subscribe button, smash the like button so this video reaches every Vikings fan on the planet, and ring that notification bell so you never miss another breakdown. We are in the thick of mock draft season.
Hey
and it is
everyone,
only
I'm
getting
working to hit
wilder
2,000
from here.
subscribers and I
Let's
need your
ride.
help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.